Hi, this is Andrew Aversa with Impact Soundworks, and in this episode of Impact Soundworks Academy, we're going to be talking all about music remixes, arrangements, and covers. One of the best ways to build a name and a following for yourself is building on the music that other people have written. And far from being inauthentic, this has actually been done for over 100 years. So in this video, we're going to talk about why this can be a viable strategy, the legality, how to do it, and then building a simple action plan to getting started. First, to give you some examples that you might not know about, let's go back about 70 years and look at an artist like Elvis Presley with his famous song, Hound Dog. Except it wasn't his song. That was a song written by somebody else and recorded several years earlier. Elvis was just the one that popularized it. Or there's Jimi Hendrix in his All Along the Watchtower, which was originally done by Bob Dylan. And that song helped propel Jimi Hendrix into stardom, but it was a cover. You can find the same story throughout the decades. In fact, there are a lot of hit songs that not only were they not written by the artists that popularized them, but they were actually recorded by one or in some cases many other artists, like Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun, Lenny Kravitz with American Woman, and even the song Mad World, which appeared in the movie Donnie Darko. That wasn't the original version. And more recently, we've seen this huge explosion of remixes and covers on platforms like SoundCloud and especially YouTube, particularly from movies, anime, and video game soundtracks. There are now artists that have parlayed the success of their remixes and arrangements into these massive careers. They're now international touring artists. They've got millions of subscribers. In some cases, they've even gotten record deals. And that basically all started out by arranging and covering and remixing music. Building on what I've talked about in previous videos, the reason why this is effective is because you're connecting with something that people already know. Everyone has music that they love, could be from any decade. There are songs that they like to sing in the shower, soundtracks that they associate with good memories, nostalgia, and all those things lead them to be more predisposed to listening to a cover of that music, just because they love the original. In other words, when you record a cover song, you're resonating with somebody even before they've heard your music, just because they know that song, they want to hear your take on it. That really paves the way for somebody to become a fan of yours, not just of the song that you covered, but your fan as an artist. Now, before I go any further, let me try to clarify some of the terminology that I'm using because I know it can be a little confusing. There's remixes, covers, and arrangements. And some people use them interchangeably, and I have to admit, even covers and arrangements are pretty similar, but there are some distinctions, including legal ones. So we're going to go through that now. Usually a cover is a more straightforward interpretation of a song. It's taking something, the original melody or lyrics, if it has any, the chords, the progression, and it's playing it pretty closely to how the original piece was. Even if it's on a different set of instruments, it's still pretty close. Whereas an arrangement implies that there's more musical recomposition happening. There might be new harmonies, there might be new parts to the song, new lyrics, original material that's being put in there, and in general, it implies that more is being done to change the piece of music from what it was originally. For example, the Grammy Award-winning artist Jacob Collier is an incredible musician who most definitely does arrangements, in particular of a lot of classic funk and Motown songs, and he's gotten such huge notoriety because of the very musically interesting things he's done with those original songs. And while a cover means a new recording of a piece of music, an arrangement doesn't necessarily mean that the music is being recorded. You could do an arrangement of, say, Silent Night, the classic Christmas tune, and you could print that arrangement on sheet music and hand it out to people. So an arrangement is not inherently a recording, and as such, there are even rules and licenses that can be applied when you create an arrangement to sell your own version of it and give royalties to the original songwriter. That doesn't really apply to covers because, once again, that's a more straightforward interpretation. So finally, a remix is the most fundamentally different of these three things. A remix typically means you're using the original audio. You might be taking parts away, adding new things like new vocals or beats or something like that. But the point is, it's based on the original audio from an existing recording. It's not inherently based on a song, which could be written on a sheet of paper. These distinctions matter because the law changes depending on whether you're doing a cover or arrangement or a remix. US copyright law provides a pretty clear path to making legal covers and to a lesser extent arrangements of music without even getting the permission of the copyright holder. So that means, for example, you could actually cover, let's say, a Katy Perry or a Madonna song without getting their permission. But at least in the United States, there isn't any sort of guaranteed mechanism for creating remixes. So that means it is much, much easier to create those covers and arrangements as opposed to creating remixes. So that segues into the next point. How do you do this legally? How do you go about creating a cover or an arrangement and make sure that the original rights holder gets paid if you're selling it? For remixes, I'll basically just say there isn't any easy legal way to do it without talking to the copyright holder directly. Now, if it's an indie artist that you're remixing, they might be flattered by the offer to remix their music, so you can just reach out and see if you can come up with some sort of simple agreement. On the other hand, for major label stuff or soundtracks, it's very unlikely. So here, I'm just going to focus on the more traditional cover approach. There's a provision in US law that allows people to make covers as long as they pay a certain royalty for each time the song is sold or distributed, and as long as the appropriate paperwork is done, like certain notifications. Without getting too deep into the weeds of it, the thing that enables you to do this is the song has to be commercially distributed in the United States by the original rights holder. So that means as long as the song was put on Spotify or it was sold in stores on a CD or anything like that, then it's fair game. You get what's called a mechanical license, and then you can do your own recording and start selling it. But the key thing here isn't the royalty requirement, but actually the requirement that the song has to be publicly and commercially distributed beforehand. I've been a part of the video game arrangement scene for a while, and that requirement has actually caused us a lot of frustration because there are plenty of really popular Japanese-made game franchises and soundtracks. But for many of these, like the Final Fantasy series or Castlevania or Mega Man, things like that, the soundtracks either took forever to be officially released in the United States, and in many cases, some of these classic soundtracks haven't ever been commercially released, even though they were released in other regions like Japan. Just because the game has been localized and translated and released in the United States doesn't mean the music in the game can be officially covered and licensed. You can still try to reach out to the publisher, but your chances are pretty low. They have to have published the music in the United States first. Practically speaking, almost nobody goes through that laborious manual process just because it's very paperwork intensive and you have to stay on top of the notices and the royalty distributions. So instead of doing that, what you can do is license a song through one of various services that exclusively handle cover song licensing. A few examples of this are SoundDrop, Easy Song Licensing, and HFA Songfile. Of course, as time goes on, some of these services might shut down or new ones might come up in their place. That's already happened several times in the last 10 years. So I'll keep links and updates in the video description below for some good services that you can use for cover song licensing. The key takeaway here is that if you're going to sell a cover or monetize it in some way, like on Spotify, you can't just upload it to an aggregator. You do have to get a license for it. And going through one of those services is going to be the easiest way you can do that. Now, can you make a cover or a bootleg remix and just throw it up on SoundCloud or YouTube? Sure. And are you going to get in trouble for it? Probably not. Most publishers are not going to go after small fry, and even some big channels seem to get away with publishing stuff like that on a regular basis. And I think part of the reason is that if a publisher or rights holder really cares, they can engage in various YouTube tools like claiming a video and getting the ad revenue for it if it's something they feel they own the rights to. Worst case scenario, they can send a takedown and the video might get removed, but you're still not going to get sued for doing it. So now that you understand the sort of legality and background to making covers and arrangements, let's come up with a simple action plan that you can apply to your own career. First, think about the kind of cover or arrangement that you'd like to do. Is it going to be something more straightforward, or are you going to go in depth and write new lyrics and harmonies and new instrumental parts? Personally, I think it's a lot more interesting when people put their own spin on a piece of music. I spent a lot of years as an artist on this website called Overclocked Remix, which, despite the name, was actually all about arrangements of video game music. And it was actually a requirement to get your music posted. You had to put more of a spin on it than just covering the song straight up one-to-one. And then next, how do you choose what to cover? The most obvious thing is just think about, well, what music do you like? What music inspires you, and cover that. But the downside to that approach is that what you like might not necessarily mesh with what's popular and what people are looking for on a lot of these modern platforms. For example, if you cover a classical piece of music, like you record your own version of a Mozart or Beethoven piece, that doesn't mean that piece is going to become popular. The kind of people that are interested in that sort of thing are probably not going to be searching on YouTube for the latest Beethoven or Mozart cover or recording. Instead, you want to think about what is popular right now in media. So that could be everything from blockbuster movie soundtracks to popular anime, video games, and even, I kind of hesitate to say this, but even like popular memes that have music associated with them can be an interesting source of inspiration. So what you can try to do is identify what people are talking about right now on social media. You could take a look at any sort of video game blogs or pop culture blogs and see what are people talking about. For example, a game came out a few years ago as of the making of this video called Undertale. And even though Undertale is not as popular from a sales perspective as something like, say, the Call of Duty series, the music for Undertale was absolutely huge and it got covered and remixed so many times, it just blew up on YouTube. And even today, it's still popular. If you can find something like that, something people are talking about, excited about, there's a passionate fan base for the music, that's going to give you the best results for the time that you put in. The flip side is that if you're sort of chasing the latest trend all the time, that can be an easy way to feel burned out because now you're making music just because of, analytics and marketing, not because it really inspires you. That's why it's important to mix up the covers you do of more popular stuff with covers of things that you really care about and that motivate you. Plus, you probably want to mix in your own original music somewhere in that release schedule. So you should take it one song at a time, one cover at a time. Start with something like YouTube if you have a very small following or no following at all. Don't monetize it right off the bat, especially if you can't pay for a license through something like Easy Song licensing. You can just put it up there with the correct song and publisher attribution in the video description. If you feel like something is becoming really popular, it's getting a lot of views and comments, then you could pursue licenses if you haven't already and get it out there through an aggregator so you get on all those other platforms like Apple Music, Google Play, and Spotify. Eventually, with persistence and as you continue to improve your own craft and technique as a musician, you're going to see more and more people becoming your fans as they stumble on your catalog of covers. This really does work no matter what style or genre of music you do. So as you think about the next piece of music that you do and the next thing that you put your effort into promoting, think about doing a cover or an arrangement. And with that, I'll wrap up this video and say, please like and subscribe if you like this content in Impact Soundworks Academy, and be sure to comment and let us know your thoughts on doing arrangements and covers and remixes. This has been Andrew Aversa, and I'll see you next time.